Hello everyone, watch this review here with a look at the Diamond Select creature from the Black Lagoon. Specifically this configuration here, which includes Kate Lawrence, the girlfriend of the hero, Dr. Reed, played by... who am I kidding? I had to look up her name, I couldn't remember it. But yeah, there's at least one other configuration available for this figure, and that's a single card, released as a Toys R Us exclusive. This one retails for about $15. This one's around $20, although you can actually find it for less. So if you're wondering, is the girl worth the extra $5? Keep in mind that I bought this one first, and then later went and bought this one, so you know, she was kind of worth the extra $20 in my case. I will be opening this one. This one will probably stay boxed up. The two figures, as far as I'm aware, have identical sculpts. It's just that they have different paint jobs. You'll note that the larger box here has a shiny sort of metallic finish. This one flatter tones. Now, I guess depending on how you look at it, it might not necessarily be so much a metallic paint job, but they might have given it more of a sheen because the character is often wet, and things that are wet do have a tendency to shine from the water. But beyond that, this has a much, I guess, richer green, whereas this one's got more of a yellowish green. Given that the original film was shot in black and white, you know, which one's proper is anyone's guess. But I will only be opening this one to start with. This one I'll probably leave up on the wall for at least some time. It does have a different display base as well. It's got like this little thing with a down tree as opposed to the other one, which is just sort of beach display. So that package, we have this really awesome image of the head of the creature. On the back it shows the figures. A little bit of a read up on the movie if you haven't seen it, and I would recommend seeing it. And then listening to the audio commentary done by film historian Tom Weaver, 'cause he's really good at his job. Now for the other stuff, I actually have already reviewed a pack with the creature and Dr. Reed. I didn't get the 4-pack or whatever with the Kate Lawrence and the alternate creature. And at some point I may pick up the mummy, but hold on a second and I'll get this out of box. Now, if you've seen any of my Marvel Select reviews, you'll know that Diamond Select decorates the inside of the box as much as the outside for that line, but unfortunately in this case, all we get is this really generic looking, those green clouds. I don't know. You know, it's just more than a little disappointing, because, you know, you figure they could have done something. Now, the pack also comes with an insert showing off their mini-mate stuff. Actually looks really neat. And on the back it shows some of the other offerings in the line, including the Toys R Us exclusives for some of the more recent entries. And then they have this really neat display for the mini-mates again. Let's see, we've got a lot of stuff to look at, so I guess we'll start with the base here, or stand. And there really is not much to it. The texturing's kind of weird. I mean, it looks like sand, but when you actually look at the stuff, it looks like it's sculpted like rock, because there's not a lot of granulation or something, so it's kind of odd that they opted for this, but yeah, I guess from a distance it probably looks more like sand. Sides, we have this nice painting and stuff for the rock formation with a little moss or lichen, or how you pronounce it, or algae growing on the side. Now the kind of odd thing is that yeah, the figure has like peg holes in his feet, but on the little stand thing here there's no place to actually peg him in. So I'm just wondering why they bothered giving him peg holes in the first place, although he stands pretty poorly. Won't take a stand on anything. kind of have to really balance it back. I mean, this is one of those instances where he's probably worse off for having foot pivot. If he didn't have the actual, well, not necessarily the pivot, but I think more the forward and back. If he didn't have the forward and back, I think it'd be a lot more stable if you could only move the sides of his or the feet to the sides, or fins to the side, because they're really fins. Yeah, that's one immediate criticism for the figure. But before we really get into talking about him, let's take a closer look at the accessory, which I guess convinced me to sort of rebuy or buy a second version of this figure because she was included. Now, honestly, when I first saw images of her, I wasn't all that impressed, but then I started seeing some photos of the two of them together where he's just kind of menacing her and stuff, and it actually looked really, really cool, and, you know, kind of decided to pick her up for that dynamic. The sculpting, pretty nice here. I mean, it's definitely a decent female build. There's no joints, she's basically just a statue. Although there is a fair amount of detail. Mostly on the swimsuit, naturally, because, you know, you can't have as much detail in the flesh without it looking kind of funny. So, I mean, all around, you know, just a decent looking static piece. And of course, in the bottom, they have the trademark information. But yeah, definitely something that I'm happy to have had this set versus the Toys R Us set for, although I also have the Toys R Us set, so indeed. As for the creature himself, he's a bit larger than the previous Toy Island creature from the Black Lagoon that I reviewed. And if you notice, they really have a lot more shapeliness and stuff to his limbs. The thighs in this are really thin, but these are much thicker thighs. And even like the calves look a little bit more developed. Although, I mean, just comparing the two, you can definitely see some similarities. You know, because they're based on the same character, or depictions of the same character, but it's kind of interesting where this has more of a scaly look to it, and rather than having like real scales and stuff, so you'll notice that this has more of a shape, like it sort of rice-like in places. I mean, that's the best way I could describe it. Like, some of the things look kind of like grains of rice in terms of shape, whereas for this one, for the most part, they're just kind of like little balls, little circles. So, I mean, the detail there is kind of weaker. Although, I mean, if you look at the claws, or fins, or flippers, whatever you might call it, a lot more detail on these, much nicer paint on them, as opposed to this version, which, you know, doesn't even really opt to have a different paint for the little part that goes between, whatever we actually call that. And of course, these claws are pretty sharp. Yeah, pretty sharp. I'm not as fond of the head sculpt here. I mean, it just looks like the head is too long. I mean, typically, I think it's supposed to be like a little squat or a little bit wider. I guess the image that they base it on is a bit longer, but even then, I don't think that, you know, it's a great likeness. And some of the other images I've seen have had a somewhat squatter looking head. And of course, he's got this crazy chin going on here. No doubts about it, he's not a handsome monster, folks. Then he also has the different colors here for the gills, I guess. I suppose this one, which does not. The one thing that I do really like about this version versus the other is that the little fin on the side here has more of a shape to it. It's got more of a curve. This one side, not a lot of curve. Other side has some amount of curve, but I don't know, it just doesn't seem like the detail's as nice, although it does stand out a bit more just for being a different color. In terms of articulation, the Toy Island version definitely has this one beat. You've got no knee articulation, no hip articulation, although hip articulation would have been tough to do with the fins and stuff around the back. Nothing at the waist, which they could have easily have done a cut, though it would look funny because when these things don't quite line up. We could have sworn we had articulation, but maybe we don't even have that. Basically, the only articulations at the feet, which I honestly wish they hadn't opted for, or at least had limited more because of the balancing issues. You kind of have to have it going more forward or whatever. And I mean, it's a lot of effort just to get a figure that's basically stuck in one pose to stand, and it's just bizarre. But he does have shoulder articulation, single joint here at the elbow, and then articulation at the wrist, just like the Toy Island version. Now, I guess one thing I will give it is it does have some decent presentation value. I mean, the use of color and everything helps it pop a little bit. It will definitely sort of stand out on your shelf. The paint has a lot more variation. Again, a lot more use of color. If you look at the hands here, it's got a lot more detail. But at the same time, it's just got that really annoying issue where he tends to fall over, and the fact that despite the included peg holes here, there's no place to actually peg him into his base, which is, it's just stupid. That's all I can describe it as. Especially given the fact that, we have these kinds of balance issues. I'm not sure if there's supposed to be some place on the base where it kind of balances that out, because one foot's actually a little bit higher than the other, so it'll stand better, but I'm honestly not liking this one all that much, just for that whole balance issue. Oh look, he's standing up, but one foot's almost completely off the ground. Yeah. That said, he's still a pretty nice looking figure. He's a decent, reasonably priced iteration of the character, because the Toy Island one typically will go for quite a bit more. And he does come with Kay Lawrence here, who, is a decent looking accessory. Although she also doesn't quite stay on the ground. Imagine probably looks like she's more grounded while she's on the stand. No, still looks like she's kind of hovering with space between there. Oh well, I mean, it's a nice enough set. I just really wish that they had gone with something with maybe a little bit more articulation, maybe a little bit better stability, and definitely with something to peg it into, because he does have some balance issues. But yeah, this has been a look at the Diamond Select creature from the Black Lagoon. Until next time, folks. You know what, since that ran long, let me just do some quick pros and cons. First off, the body sculpting on the figure is pretty nice. The paintwork, also fairly detailed. You'll notice the sort of black shadowing underneath every set of ridges on these scales. There's also some different tones used here in the stomach, a variety used for the different fins. The accessory also is pretty nice. Decent sculpting work, and a stand looks decent, although mine has some paint defects on it. Major downside, the fact that the figure can't stand all that well. So far he's actually fallen once. So I mean, you'd have to find something to actually peg him into, because it doesn't come with pegs. Again, not a ton of articulation here. Nothing at knees, nothing at the hips or anything. In fact, the head looks like it has the seams for movement and stuff, but I think they just cast the head as a separate piece, then attached it later. Also, I don't view the head as being particularly great. It just looks like it's way too tall / long. But yeah, those are my thoughts in a nutshell.